What's up everyone, and welcome back to the Jets franchise in Madden 18. And today we got a lot to unpack here, as there's a lot going on within the Jets organization right now. But first, the most important thing to address is Marcus Maye will miss the next 5 weeks because of the injury that he suffered in the last game. The next man up would have been Rontez Miles. Unfortunately, he only has 85 speed. In a system that the Jets run, requiring safeties to cover a lot of ground, that is not acceptable. So, what did the Jets do? They went out and signed Eddie Jackson off of the Bears practice squad, a more prototypical free safety that the Jets didn't really have on their roster. Eddie Jackson has a lot of speed, he can cover ground really quickly, and he's more skilled in zone than necessarily as a tackler, really unlike any of the safeties on the Jets' current roster. However, like the Jets' starting safeties, he is also from the SEC, so there is that going for him as well. And following that roster move, a big trade has just been announced between the New York Jets and the Washington Redskins. The Jets will be shipping out 3 huge pieces of their team: defensive lineman Sheldon Richardson, running back Matt Forte, and cornerback Morris Claiborne. And in exchange, they will be receiving the Redskins' first-round pick in the upcoming draft, as well as their third-round pick in this upcoming draft, and young cornerback Kendall Fuller. And in theory, the Redskins were a perfect trade partner for the Jets. They had a big piece to give up in defensive lineman Sheldon Richardson, somebody who's shown in the past that he's capable of making a game-changing impact along the defensive line. Kirk Cousins still has yet to sign a long-term contract. And with the other quarterbacks on the roster, you got to think that Washington is in a hurry to try and contend for a Super Bowl, as they might have a bleak future ahead of them. Everyone knows the Redskins' biggest holes on their roster are on defense. They drafted Jonathan Allen in the first round after a really unexpected slide, as he was ranked as one of the top players in this past draft. Outside of him, the defensive line is really starving for talent. You have journeymen like Stacey McGee, Terrell McClain, Phil Taylor, and Ziggy Hood, who are okay but not great players. You have the young Matthew Ioannidis, but he's still developing. Linebacking core, you do have some pieces. You got Ryan Anderson, Zach Brown, and Mason Foster in the middle, Trent Murphy, Preston Smith, Ryan Anderson. Secondary, you have 3 really good players: Josh Norman, DJ Swearinger, and Sua Cravens. The problem with that list, 2 of them are safety. Corner is a much more impact position, and the Redskins are going to get an upgrade here. Despite losing Kendall Fuller, they now have a really respectable trio between Josh Norman, Morris Claiborne, and Bashaud Breeland. Kendall Fuller is young and has plenty of promise. Unfortunately, right now, he's really not a great NFL corner. For a team with Super Bowl hopes, that's not an ideal situation to have that guy as your 3rd best corner. Fortunately, there are teams in the NFL that just want young guys as supplemental pieces. Kendall Fuller is athletic enough to keep up with some of the best of them. The areas of improvement that Kendall Fuller needs are mostly in coverage and football sense. Those 2 things just get improved over time. Something that he needs and something he will get with the New York Jets. We know the defense for the Redskins is subpar, but I think an underrated storyline is their running game. Rob Kelly got everybody's attention when last year on national TV he rushed for 137 yards and 3 touchdowns on just 24 carries against the Green Bay Packers. Ever since then, he hasn't really been showing the potential he showed in that game, only averaging 3.3 yards a carry this year. Samaje Perine hasn't done much better. In fact, he's done exactly the same. So looking at it from the Redskins angle, this trade makes a ton of sense. They do have to give up a lot of assets that could be very valuable, but they fill their 3 biggest holes on their team with 1 move. They do have to give up a young prospect and 2 picks, but that's just the price of doing business in the NFL. If you look at it from the Jets side, Sheldon Richardson, not somebody who they were going to bring back. Matt Forte, somebody who they were going to move on from. And Morris Claiborne only had a 1-year deal. Probably going to be used as a trade chip anyway. The Jets are going to get a first-round pick, which will likely be a late first-round pick, as the Redskins are more than likely going to be a playoff team. A third-round pick that is the same case, but also Kendall Fuller, somebody who can replace Morris Claiborne and be at least a promising piece at the corner position, which is one of the weakest on their roster. This may look like a trade really lopsided in the Redskins' favor right now, but we'll see how the Jets use those draft picks down the line. If they can acquire blue chippers with those picks, this was a great trade for both teams. And it looks like another trade is developing as we speak, and Bilal Powell will be staying in New York, but not for the Jets. He will be traded to the New York Giants in exchange for a 5th-round pick. We all know how bad the Giants' running backs are. Bilal Powell might not be a monumental improvement, but he is better than Paul Perkins and company. The Jets are again going to get rid of a player who doesn't really have a future on the team and acquire a draft pick, so they're really working their way in asset management. So the Jets now have a couple of roster spots to fill, and they have a couple of starting spots in that group as well. The Jets already acquired one player who could immediately start for them that's young and has potential in cornerback Kendall Fuller, but one of the biggest positions in need on their roster is edge rusher. Between injuries to Lorenzo Malden and Jordan Jenkins, and now the trade of Sheldon Richardson, the Jets are facing the prospect of having to start Corey Lemonnier and Josh Martin. One of those guys starting is fine, you can probably get away with it, but not both. Why are you looking at the 49ers? Well, they're a team with so many defensive linemen they don't know what to do with themselves. You have the young DeForest Buckner, who was a top 10 draft pick, and then starting across from Buckner, you have Elvis Dumervil, who's an experienced and accomplished pass rusher, Aaron Lynch, who's proved himself in the past, and Eric Armstead, another former first-round pick. And don't think the rich can't get richer. They also have number 3 overall pick Solomon Thomas on their roster, manning the middle along with the veterans Quentin Dial and Earl Mitchell, both very talented and serviceable defensive linemen. There are so many defensive linemen on this roster that guys just aren't getting playing time. And one of them who's not getting playing time is former first-round pick Eric Armstead. It's been a rough go of things for Eric Armstead since he was drafted. He hasn't put up the most impressive stats since he came into the NFL, though if you look just at stats, his college career wasn't the most impressive either. But at one time, he did have enough prestige to get taken relatively high in the first round of the NFL draft. Unfortunately for him, Trent Baalke is the man who drafted him and not John Lynch. Eric Armstead was shipped out for a 5th round pick and Kembrell Tompkins, who started a fair bit but been relatively unproductive this year for the Jets outside of a couple of big catches. Really just more of a throw-in into this trade. But Eric Armstead will be getting an immediate starting spot at left end. Well, you might be asking yourself, isn't Leonard Williams already the left end? He is now the defensive tackle. And the Jets are now a 4-3 team, a mid-season scheme change for the Jets. Almost unprecedented in the NFL. However, the Jets had pretty much been running a 4-3 anyway, as their nickel package is very similar to a 4-3 base scheme. You're just going to have an extra linebacker sitting back in coverage. Now, there's not a lot of depth on the defensive line, and there is a lot of depth in the linebacking core. More in off-ball linebackers than pure edge rushers, though. So, next week is going to be interesting. It's going to be the first game with this new defense implemented, and Eric Armstead will be starting at left end, and it'll be Muhammad Wilkerson and Leonard Williams in the middle. On the other side, it will most likely be Josh Martin. However, don't expect to see Corey Lemonnier frozen out of the team's game plan or anything. Those two are pretty even in terms of talent level. But to compensate for this scheme change, the Jets had to make a couple of moves, releasing additional defensive tackle / defensive end depth in terms of Devon Still and Anthony Johnson both losing their roster spots, and signing more off-ball linebackers. Zach Vigil and Nick Vigil were both signed to 1-year deals, pretty much just fillers for the rest of this year, not going to be any sort of long-term pieces. But the Jets looking more toward the future. They have guys who fit a 4-3 scheme really well. Muhammad Wilkerson and Leonard Williams are both very talented interior players. They should make the switch to defensive tackle pretty easily. It's not a whole lot different than what they've been doing anyway. And this is going to give our off-ball linebackers a little bit more chance to shine. Darren Lee's had a fantastic season. Demario Davis is good in the middle. However, there is another man who deserves a lot of playing time, and he's shown it recently, and that is Alex Anzalone. He is somebody that the Jets signed off the Saints practice squad very early in the season. He hasn't played a whole lot, mostly due to the great play of the other two linebackers. Switching schemes will give him more of an opportunity as well, so look to see what he can do in the future. The Jets had a couple of additional roster spots to fill up, and they are going to choose a pair of rookie running backs to fill them. Now, Elijah McGuire and Jordan Todman are still on the roster. Jordan Todman, more of a return guy. He will remain the number 2 return man, but Elijah McGuire will be your Jets starter going forward. However, it's going to be a running back by committee. You'll have McGuire, you'll have Wayne Gallman, and everybody's favorite running back, Tariq Cohen, the 5'6" running back out of North Carolina A&T. Not a great carrier of the ball, but very fast, very elusive in the open field, and a guy who's going to make an immediate impact for the Jets, as he will be on the kick and punt return duties with Elijah McGuire assuming a starting role in the offense. Elijah McGuire had been a decent but not great kick returner, and I think Tariq Cohen's speed will play more to that role. He's going to get a fair amount of carries at running back, but probably not as much attention as Wayne Gallman or Elijah McGuire, at least for the next couple of weeks. We might eventually work him into the offense, and if he starts or plays and he shines, he'll definitely get carries. I'm not committed to any one of those 3 guys as a bell cow. You guys have seen that up to this point in the season as well. Matt Forte was the primary guy, but Bilal Powell was on the field, I would say, about half the time. And the last roster spot is going to go to former Bears wide receiver Kevin White. The number 7 overall pick just a couple years ago was released during this preseason and has sat in the free agent pool most of the year. Kevin White hasn't been really able to stay on the field, but he does have blazing speed and pretty decent receiving skills. We're trying to see if he can still tap some of that talent that made him such a coveted prospect. A lot of people thought he was better than Amari Cooper coming out of college. Marquez Wilson has recently come back off of injury, but we're not going to overwhelm him right away. He'll probably get some snaps in this game, but I would say Kevin White's actually probably going to be the third guy for most of the next couple games. Now I imagine Bears fans are probably really happy with that last sequence because I just mentioned 3 former members of their team. And here's a look at the Jets' new defense going into the next game. There's going to be 5 new starters heading into the next game. Eddie Jackson, a free safety, not listed right now. He's behind Marcus May. Kendall Fuller at left corner. Alex Anzalone at the left outside linebacker position. And then Josh Martin and Eric Armstead on the edges rushing the passer. Jets are looking toward the future, and these trades reaffirm that. That's going to do it for me. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think of these moves down below in the comments section. And I'll see you next time for more Jets franchise in Madden NFL 18.